Welcome to a whole new step in Meet the Idea Shapers. So we have finished the step of chunk, which is you got a whole big pile of information. You're pulling out the relevant chunks, deciding what's important to put into our drawing, to put into our visual thinking. Our next step is sort and group. So you got that pile of stuff. Now we're starting to move it around and figuring out what patterns are we seeing? What connections are we making in that information? So, very simply, we're going to talk about the sort idea shapers first. A few weeks from now, we'll talk about the group idea shapers. And today, our very first idea shaper for sorting is the filter. The filter is very simply, you got a lot of stuff, you're using some kind of criteria. Here's our green line inside of our funnel. You're using some kind of criteria to sort out what meets that criteria. Now, this filtering, this sorting is happening all the time. It's a very natural thinking process. That's a good thing, right? It's what we do naturally. So what we want to do is two things. One, we want to make sure we are very conscious of what are the right criteria. What is the right sorting mechanism inside this filter for what we're trying to do. The other thing is kind of check to see, do you have some implicit filters that you're not aware of that might be getting in the way of whatever it is you're trying to think through? So, we all have filters, we all have biases, so it's useful to say, okay, wait, what lens am I looking through this at? Through which lens am I looking at this? Maybe that's the right sentence. Useful to think about filters very explicitly, useful to question our assumptions in the filters we're using. Now, the very first filter, which we were using in the last step of chunking, there we go, the objective, making sure what you're filtering out is relevant to the task at hand. So that's happening all the time. Just very simply, do I need this to solve the problem I'm working on, to see the full picture of whatever I'm trying to look at, and make sure that I've got all the perspectives I want, all that good stuff. Here is another very common way of sorting, which is by category. Now, sometimes you go into an objective knowing what those categories are, and sometimes you want to figure out those categories as you work. So it can go either way. It could be that you have ones you already know what those categories are, but often we're getting all that stuff out of our head onto paper or from a conversation, from some kind of external source. We're taking that stuff, getting on paper, and then once it's made tangible, that's when we can start to see what is A, what is B, how many categories do we need, how do we sort this out. So we'll talk more about grouping and how we visually represent that, but this is definitely just getting the similar stuff together, number one. Number two, if you count the objective. Number one, objective. Number two, by category. Number three, this is a favorite of mine, the gut check. How do you feel about this thing? If you're sort of thinking like, okay, is this something I'm really resistant to? Doesn't feel good, makes me uncomfortable? Is it something you're totally neutral about, where you're like, whatever, fine? Is it something you're happy about, or are you it's something you're really excited about? And this could be you as an individual, this could be you as a team, you as an organization, those kind of things. One thing I love about drawing is when you're making a physical drawing, you're going to have physical sensations in your body. Now, some of you may not. Some of you may, this isn't something you tune into, but I find it really effective to watch out for those signals and note, I'm feeling this way about this thing. And visually, with the next idea shaper, we'll talk about how do you visually mark those things. But, visually, it could be something you're really uncomfortable with, goes on the page, then gets X'd out. Or it could be doesn't go on the page because it's just too difficult. But again, you're thinking about how do I feel about these things? Something like this that you're static about might get like those sparky lines around it, like, hey, look at me, this is such a good idea. Gut check. Another very reliable, very useful set of filters is resources. What time is this going to take? What money or physical stuff is this going to take? And what people and human resources is this going to take? So this can be a really useful set of filters when you're looking at whatever it is you're trying to solve, whatever complexity is you're trying to wrangle, any of that good stuff. And another example is time. So specifically looking at that leftmost one we just saw, what's short term? What are your quick wins? what's medium term, whatever medium term means for you and what you're trying to do. And what's long term, maybe really far out there, but you got to think about the long haul, the long game. Or it could just be there's a lot of stuff that it takes, it might be far away just because it's far away. It could be far away because it's going to take a lot of stuff to get there. But this is another way to sort things out and say, hey, let's get this done out of the way. Or, hey, we can't forget this. It doesn't seem so immediate, but let's not forget this. Now, filters, like I said, and these are just a couple examples. You're going to have countless different types of filters you may be using, all depending on what you are thinking through. That's it. Now, later, when we get to the fifth step of grasp, we talk about the investigator. And the investigator is fantastic because you are taking a rigorous look at whatever you're trying to do. You're really thinking something through by applying different sets of filters. So it's not just saying, hey, it's this one thing. It's like, hey, it's this one thing, but now what if I looked at it from this set of filters? Or what if I looked at it from this other set of filters? So that's a tie-in between this first step filter and the fifth step's investigator in grasp, a way that you're really using more critical thinking, because you are thinking about using different sets of filters to get a clearer, more complete, more detailed picture of whatever the heck you are trying to do. So that is idea shaper number 1 in sort and group, the filter.